Ever wonder why governments spend money they don't have, especially during a crisis? Or why your taxes might go up or down depending on the economy? The answer, in large part, comes down to one man, John Maynard Keynes. He wasn't just an economist, he was a revolutionary thinker who completely flipped our understanding of how economies work. Today, we're diving deep into the mind of Keynes and uncovering how his radical ideas from a century ago are still shaping your wallet and the world you live in. Before Keynes, most economists believed in what's called classical economics. The core idea was simple: laissez-faire, or let it be. They thought economies were like self-correcting machines. If there was a downturn and people lost jobs, wages would fall, businesses would hire more people, and everything would naturally bounce back. The market, left to its own devices, would always find its equilibrium. Government intervention. That was seen as a wrench in the gears, something that would only make things worse. It was a neat and tidy theory that seemed to work. Until it didn't. Then came the 1930s and the Great Depression. The world plunged into an economic nightmare. Stock markets crashed, banks failed, and unemployment skyrocketed. In the United States, 1 in 4 people was out of a job. People were losing their homes, their savings, their hope. The classical self-correcting machine was clearly broken. The economy wasn't bouncing back. It was spiraling downwards, and no one knew how to stop it. This was the dark stage upon which Keynes would introduce his groundbreaking ideas. He saw the suffering and realized the old rules no longer applied. A new way of thinking was desperately needed. Keynes looked at the Great Depression and had a profound insight. The problem wasn't that goods were too expensive or that wages were too high. The problem was a massive lack of demand. People and businesses were scared. So, they stopped spending. When people don't spend, businesses don't sell. When businesses don't sell, they lay off workers. And when workers lose their jobs, they have even less money to spend. Keynes called this the paradox of thrift. What's rational for one person saving money during uncertain times is disastrous when everyone does it at once. The economy was stuck in a vicious cycle, a low-demand trap that it couldn't escape on its own. So, what was Keynes's solution? It was simple, yet revolutionary for its time. If the private sector, that's you, me, and all the businesses is unable or unwilling to spend, then someone else has to step in and fill the gap. And who has the power to do that on a massive scale? The government. Keynes argued that during a recession, the government should actively increase its spending. This is called fiscal policy. By funding public works projects like building roads, bridges, and dams, the government could create jobs directly. These newly employed workers would then have money to spend, which would boost demand for goods and services. This, in turn, would encourage businesses to hire more people, creating a positive feedback loop that could jolt the economy back to life. This idea of government spending to stimulate the economy is what we now call Keynesian economics. It was a direct challenge to the laissez-faire orthodoxy. Keynes argued that waiting for the market to fix itself was not an option. In his famous words, "In the long run, we are all dead." He believed that governments had a moral and practical duty to intervene to ease human suffering and prevent economic collapse. This wasn't about socialism or government control. It was about using the government as a tool to stabilize a capitalist economy. He also suggested that governments could cut taxes during a downturn, leaving more money in people's pockets to encourage them to spend and invest. But what about the debt? How could the government spend money it didn't have? Keynes had an answer for that too. He proposed that governments should run deficits during recessions, that is, spend more than they collect in taxes. This was a necessary evil to get the economic engine running again. Then, during periods of economic boom, when people are employed and businesses are thriving, the government should do the opposite. It should cut its spending and raise taxes to pay back the debt accumulated during the downturn. This counter-cyclical policy, spending in bad times, saving in good times, was designed to smooth out the volatile boom and bust cycles of capitalism. It was a radical idea that governments should actively manage the economy like a thermostat, turning up the heat when it's cold and cooling it down when it gets too hot. Keynes's ideas were put to the test. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal in the United States, while not a purely Keynesian program, incorporated many of its elements. The massive government spending on infrastructure and social programs during this era helped to alleviate some of the worst effects of the Depression, however. What truly demonstrated the power of Keynesian stimulus was World War II. The immense government spending required for the war effort essentially ended the Great Depression. Factories ran at full capacity, unemployment vanished, and the economy roared back to life. After the war, Keynesian principles became the dominant economic philosophy in the Western world for nearly 3 decades, leading to a period of unprecedented economic growth and stability known as the post-war boom. Of course, Keynesian economics is not without its critics. In the 1970s, many Western economies faced a new problem, stagflation, which is a nasty combination of high unemployment and high inflation. Critics, like Milton Friedman and the Monetarist school of thought, argued that Keynesian policies were to blame. They claimed that excessive government spending was causing inflation, and that government intervention was inefficient and distorted the market. They advocated for a return to more free market principles, focusing on controlling the money supply rather than managing demand. This led to a shift in economic policy in the 1980s under leaders like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, who favored deregulation, tax cuts, and reduced government spending. Yet, Keynes's ghost never really left the building. Whenever a major economic crisis hits, his ideas make a roaring comeback. Look at the 2008 global financial crisis. Faced with a potential collapse of the world economy, governments around the globe, from the United States to China, unleashed massive stimulus packages. They bailed out banks, cut taxes, and poured money into infrastructure projects. These were textbook Keynesian responses designed to prevent a repeat of the Great Depression. More recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw governments once again step in with enormous spending programs, sending direct payments to citizens and providing loans to businesses to keep the economy afloat during lockdowns. So, what is the legacy of John Maynard Keynes? He fundamentally changed the conversation about the role of government in the economy. He gave us the tools: fiscal policy, stimulus spending, deficit financing to fight recessions and manage economic downturns. While the debate between government intervention and free markets will probably never end, Keynes's core insight remains as relevant as ever. Markets are not always perfect, and sometimes a helping hand is needed to get us back on track. His ideas have been used, debated, and adapted, but they have undeniably shaped the modern economic world we live in. The next time you hear a politician talking about a stimulus package or infrastructure spending, you can thank or question the enduring influence of John Maynard Keynes. Thanks for watching. If you found this explanation helpful, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you never miss an update on the big ideas that shape our world. See you next time.